So, I mean, in terms of a cold open, because I kind of thought last time that we were only going to do one post-read episode rather than, the normal Cosmere. I didn't actually look up any memes or anything like that. And, I'm not creative enough to come up with one on the fly.
You had a whole week, you know that, right?
Shh.
Continue.
Instead, I was going to talk about the elephant in the room, besides the toddler in the next room over. And that is that we've tried a couple of times to add video. And I think we even referenced it in the last episode. And we're still experimenting. Listeners, be patient with us. We're listening. We're trying. We're experimenting.
All right. You want credit. And you know what? That's fair.
I want credit?
Credit where credit is due. I've mentioned adding video, and I have made some half-assed.
I like it. No,
half-assed attempts.
That's it. No, half-assed.
At doing video, and then you saw me struggling and not putting in the correct amount of effort. So then you took over and you did a whole bunch of research. And now, theoretically, we are having video. So.
I don't think this is going to be the final. I don't think this is going to be where we land either. But we're trying.
But you might. I think we are actually recording video this time.
I've got a few other solutions in the queue, so maybe
Let me just double check because I didn't double check
Christ.
last time. It does say there is a little red dot that does say recording.
Yeah, because last time I even mentioned it a couple times, I'm making weird eyebrow motions, and then there was no recording dot.
I think you did need that dry run to get it out of your system, I think. Are you looking at your own video feed?
Maybe. I'm looking at you and your video feed
Please
too.
Please don't.
Bring
your notes up.
I have my notes up, thank you.
On the same... Yeah, okay.
I have my notes up, thank you.
This is a really long cold open.
Well, hello and welcome to Cosmere Casual, your casual reader's guide for the Cosmere Curious. I'm your co-host, the insufferable Nick Gorman.
And I'm your co-host, AJ Gorman.
Also, if you see us I don't even know if we're going to even have video on the final product here, but if you see me looking at the camera and making intense eye contact, and then sometimes looking away, that's because AJ is that way.
I'm pretty sure people...
Get that way.
Would get
We're
that
sitting across
without
from each
the
other.
explanation, but okay.
What's your name?
I did introduce myself.
You did? I missed it. I was too self-conscious.
We're going to talk about something that you've been dying to talk about for weeks now. So we're going to talk
What are we talking about again?
Secret History, Cosmere Connections.
Spoilers for everything published in the Cosmere, as well as some speculation.
Up until this point, because it is October.
Oh, yeah. Oh, right. Especially
2024.
Because probably by the time this gets published, because we record so far in advance, probably Wind and Truth is going to be out.
Well, that, and I am not reading the preview chapters, which is apparently like a fourth of the book.
Yeah.
And I'm not reading those.
Well, shucks.
Anyways, okay. So let's talk about Khriss and Nazh at first, I think. Because that is the first really big Cosmere meeting that happens in Secret History.
No. Preservation.
Okay. We'll talk about shards another time. Well, later in the episode.
Fair enough.
So the first really big meeting is with Khriss and Nazh. It was really exciting to see Khriss after having read White Sand.
Sand. Singular.
She seems like a very different air. And one of the very first questions that I have is, she said that she was exiled. Does that mean she was exiled from her homeland? Or she was exiled from her planet?
So this was discussed in Arcanum Unbounded, in the essay right before the non-canon prose version of White Sand.
It has been a while for me for the Arcanum Unbounded.
So she explained that autonomy did something to the perpendicularity on Taldane, and that it is exceedingly difficult or impossible for world hoppers to get on and off of Taldane anymore. So I don't think it was intended for Khriss.
Not a personal exile,
I don't think it was a personal exile, but functionally it's the same, where she is, she can't.
We're not in the space age, so
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But I think we got a lot more characterization out of Nazh.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, I think this was the first time, in publication order, I think this was the first time we saw either of them on screen. I know we saw Nazh before this was published, writing notes back and forth on the maps, particularly in Stormlight Archive. But I don't. And
so for background information,
yeah.
Khriss is the author of all of the Arcanum Unbounded Ars Arcanum at the back of each book.
Yep.
She's the one doing studies on planets and magic systems and stuff.
And like I mentioned in the White Sand Cosmere episode, her role in the Cosmere is like the arch scholar. Like she learns, and you can see the progress of her learning things through the Ars Arcanum chapters at the end of each book. And like as publication order goes on, like there's more detail added to each one, and I think that's pretty cool. But yeah.
So I don't understand why she needed to. I'll ask that question when we get to it. But Era 2. And Nazh is her assistant.
Yep.
And it sounds like he often goes to worlds without Khriss and will do some surveying and map making before.
Boots on the ground.
Yeah, boots on the ground.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting that they're together. It's interesting that Nazh seems very loyal and attached to Khriss. And for once, I don't think it's a romantic relationship.
Okay, see, I'm relying on you to let me know when there's romantic tension there.
As you should.
As
you should.
As we've established on this podcast, they're just friends. They're married. They're very friendly. They were arranged marriage. Whatever.
I think my favorite moment with Nazh is the fact that he does.
There's only one scene. How can you have multiple moments? Anyway.
Well, there's a lot of moments with Nazh. I mean, the very first moment is Nazh is just like, "Hey, it's you."
Hey, yeah. What? Survivor's gonna survive? Huh? We'll get on that later.
And clearly he has not been like in and around the Cosmere long enough to be. I feel like
who hasn't? I would say Nazh has been all over there.
I know, but I feel like I feel like Nazh. This is still relatively early in the Cosmere for the overall arc. So I feel like Nazh is just like his naivete or his ability to be surprised seems a bit high for what I feel like most Cosmere aware characters are.
That's fair.
So my favorite moment is when Nazh does turn back.
I was about to say
because it's either give Kelsier his knife.
Yeah, because it's either meeting Kelsier palming the knife, or Nazh giving the knife back. So all right, giving the knife back to Kelsier.
So I'm looking forward to getting to know Nazh more.
Okay.
I hope we'll get to see more of him soon.
I honestly feel like we get more of his characterization just through the notes on the maps in Stormlight.
Yeah, I don't pay attention to those.
Well, okay. Well, you're missing. Like, if you want more Nazh, that's where it's at. There's also, I think he's in some of the broadsheets in Era 2.
It's so little.
But those are,
the text is so hard to read on the paperbacks. And then it's so difficult.
But it's narrated in the audiobook.
Is it? Okay.
It's narrated in the audiobooks.
All right. Fine. I'll pay attention there.
Yeah, and he's also in the broadsheets in Era 2.
Everything is in the fucking broadsheets.
Yeah, everything's in the fucking broadsheets. And not in but they're also unreliable narrators, which I know you hate it. Well, me too. I have to go on Coppermine and blah, blah, blah. Experts there, kind of lay things out for us. Us casual folk.
I'm looking for stuff as I'm reading it, and I'm just passing.
Still missing it. Yeah, I know. Sucks.
But Nazh does seem like a big old softie. At this point. The other thing to note for Nazh is that he is from Threnody.
Yep.
And I'm so excited to go back to Threnody
in
our next book.
Yeah, because next we're going to read Shadows for Silence in the Forests of Hell. Long
and it's been a long time since I've read that, and I feel like Threnody comes up a lot, so I'm excited to get back into Threnody.
That's fair.
There's a lot that happens with Naz's knife. I feel like Naz's knife seems significant. Like, not a lot happened in Secret History.
What happens with Naz's knife?
No, I feel like this is Brandon setting stuff up. So Brandon made a point of saying that Naz's knife didn't glow, but it was made out of metal.
That's fair.
And he also made a point of saying that Kelsier lost the knife.
Yeah.
At the end of the book. I'm like, why would you point out the fact that he lost the knife?
Do you want my headcanon about why and it's not a big deal?
I mean, you can, but I'm going to say it's wrong because I think the knife is very important.
So we had noticed that Kelsier had a lot of, was doing a lot of manifesting things from the physical world into the cognitive realm.
Mm-hmm.
So my headcanon is that the knife was manifested, and when he traveled too far away from wherever it physically lived, it went back.
I feel like that would have been demonstrated to us with a different metal object.
Fair enough. But that would also explain why it doesn't glow, because it's only the cognitive aspect rather than...
Nazh is punny, so I kind of feel like he might develop into your favorite character.
It's possible. Anything's possible.
But did you get...
Like I said, he was only in one scene. And, it's not you blink and you miss it, but it's like, okay, great.
So you didn't connect with Nazh right away because of his punniness?
No.
I'm shocked.
Yeah, okay. I can't even think. It's been a little bit since we read it by this point. I'm looking at my notes and I'm like, I don't remember even...
meeting Nazh.
No. Well, I remember meeting him, but I don't remember any puns that he said.
I didn't write them down. I just put punny.
It's not like he said, get the point and hand the knife back. No, whatever. Moving on. So, because we also meet Hoid by way of the drift.
But hold on.
That's chronologically before. I'm just saying, if we want to go in order.
I do. Well, I still want to talk about Khriss and Nazh because we learn a couple things from the conversation, but the conversation moves really fast. So one of the things I want to point out is that Khriss did talk about an original planet being out there.
Yep.
And she said that there are stories.
Yep.
Have we heard any of the stories, you think?
Yes.
What stories? Which stories?
So we get some of them in Hero of Ages, right? If you're thinking about it from the perspective of stories of how the now shards
the shattering
ad nauseam, that's in Hero of Ages, in the epigraphs, as well as if you're looking at the like folklore from Yolen, which is that original planet, which we know through Words of Brandon that it's called Yolen. But stories from that planet show up in Wit's stories in the Stormlight Archive. In particular, there's some that's like, okay, that almost certainly had to come from Yolen, where there was the dog and the dragon, right?
Was this from Die Hard?
Yeah, Rhythm of War, yes.
Okay.
So that's, because it's got dogs and dragons, it's like I don't think there are too many other
planets with that combination
in the Cosmere that would fit that combination, right? And it's probably up for debate about whether the other stories that Wit tells would be set on Roshar or Yolen or other planets. But Khriss and Nazh even mention, and something that I didn't actually realize before this most recent reread, when Kelsier describes Hoid to Khriss, she is disappointed and frustrated by his presence.
Mm-hmm.
And when they find out that he took the Lerasium, that's when they decide to pack it up and leave.
I was going to ask you what your headcanon was, because Khriss says it's not because of what you told us, which seems like a straight out lie.
Not a very convincing one either.
But what do you think the relationship between Khriss and Hoid is? Because our understanding is Hoid is kind of a one-man show. He doesn't really have...
He's got his own agenda.
Right.
And we do
he does have some allies. He is trying to be friendly with other people, but it doesn't appear that Khriss is one of them.
Right. He's sort of a wild card.
Right.
But we also see in Era 2, I want to say in Bands of Mourning, Khriss shows up at a ball,
right,
where Hoid was also at and gave Wax a coin. So whether they're coordinating or not,
they seem to be very aligned with what they're doing.
Reading between the lines, yeah, it seems like they're aligned, or they're at least friendly then. But what I could, but if I'm reading between the lines and speculating some, I'd imagine that they're competing, basically, right? Where we know Hoid has an interest, or certainly seems to have an interest, in collecting all the different magic systems.
Right.
And, or getting access to all of the different sorts of investiture within the Cosmere. So he wanted the Lerasium, presumably for that. And also presumably that would make Nazh and Khris's lives much easier. So it could be...
It would make their lives easier?
Right, because if they're trying to study and keep an eye on things throughout the Cosmere, having the powers of a Mistborn, a full Mistborn would, if they run into trouble, they can just soothe those problems away. If they can't do that, they would have another tool to be able to fight their way out.
My impression from White Sand, though, is she is more wants to be an observer rather than to experiment on herself.
No, but yes, but she does show up, right? And she does, And
she does interact. Yeah.
Yeah, and she does interact. And I think having just another tool in her tool belt, right?
Yeah.
So I suspect it's they realized that the Lerasium was gone. That Hoid had taken the Lerasium, incorrectly assumed that he took all of it, and then boogied out because they didn't want to like they did say they didn't want to be there when Ruin destroyed the planet.
Yeah.
So that's my headcanon. There's a lot of speculation baked in there, but I see them as rivals and sometimes allies.
Yeah, maybe they thought Kelsier, or maybe they thought Hoid taking the Lerasium bead was going to speed along the death faster.
Could be. Similar to how using up the Adium, kept Ruin from gaining his full power. That could be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, one more thing about Nazh and Khriss.
Okay.
There was a lot of stuff in that conversation.
Yeah, there was.
Khriss infers that...
implies? Or...
Khriss implies...
Yeah.
Or postulates that Ruin doesn't know how to splinter preservation. That's why it's a slow death.
Could be.
But I feel like that is what's happened. Is it? I don't know.
Yeah, because there was definitely a slow death for preservation.
Yeah.
Versus
so it seems weird. Like, why is so you have to have special knowledge to splinter a shard, or is that not innate knowledge? I would have thought that would be innate knowledge. Because at the very least, all of the vessels, all of the vessels, were in the plan. They were the ones who splintered out Adonalsium, so they should at least have the knowledge to how to splinter power. Well,
there's the knowledge, and then there's the ability, because Ruin was not at full capacity. Also,
that's true.
So I mean, she could have been making a wrong inference too. And you were right; it was inference. I'm sorry for cutting you off, dear. She could have just been speculating wrongly. The other way to look at it is, maybe it was something that he was unwilling to, right? Because we know from the epigraphs, I think in Oathbringer, that that Ati the vessel was one of the more good-natured of the conspirators who took down Adonalsium.
Mm-hmm.
So it might be that there was some remnant of Ati who was not willing to do that to his old friend.
Gotcha.
We don't, at the end of the day, we don't really know, and it probably had to do with the story that Brando Sando wanted to tell.
Yeah.
But my money's on that Ruin just wasn't able to because
of his powers had been handcuffed.
It had been caged by preservation for so long, and there was just enough there. Just like not every action movie ends with the bad guy, the good guy and the bad guy shooting it out, or a sword fight or something. Sometimes it ends with, slower, or get knocked off a cliff or something.
Okay.
Never mind. Don't worry about it. So Kelsier shows up. Changing the subject. Kelsier shows up.
You mean Hoid?
Yes, I meant Hoid. Shit.
Hoid, the Drifter, Saphandrius, Wit. There's way too many fucking names for this
clown.
Being.
Anyway, yes, no, he does show up. And I think it's interesting that, for reasons that become very much apparent after you've read Sunlit Man, it's very interesting that he is able to hurt Kelsier, right? Even Hoid remarks on it, says, "Oh, maybe because you're already dead, I'm allowed to hurt you. Either way, I'm gonna enjoy this."
So, quick thing, we will not get deep into this, but Hoid held a Dawnshard, which I don't even fully understand what that is. But anyways, he held something of power that because he held it for so long, even when he gave up that Dawnshard, passed it on, whatever, not holding it actively anymore, his body, his soul does not allow him to cause harm to others. He can do it. He can defend himself, but he cannot
hurt other people.
Purposely hurt other people.
Yeah.
So the fact
we see that explored a lot more in Sunlit Man.
Yes.
But
so the fact that Hoid could actually punch Kelsier was the reason why Hoid found it satisfying, if unpleasant.
It also has implications for other books, right? Because we see, because Kelsier in Secret History is a cognitive shadow, right? He is a being made up of investiture. And maybe it's because, Hoid thinks of him as already dead, but we see other cognitive shadows that are already dead and have ill intent towards Hoid, specifically the fused, and perhaps some returned, right? We know that...
Okay, hold on. Can I provide a more formal definition for a cognitive shadow?
Sure.
A type 2 invested entity.
Oh, Jesus. So it's Vasher's definition.
This is from Coppermind. It is a term used to refer to a spirit that has not yet moved into the beyond. So we did see that with Kelsier, that he was in the cognitive realm. He died, came into the cognitive realm, and did not move into the beyond.
Yeah, we see that with Kelsier. We see that with the return from Warbreaker. We see that with the fused in Stormlight. We see that with Shades. Yeah. The fused, they die, and then they are reborn. They don't go into the beyond.
So they're technically cognitive shadows?
I think. I mean, there's different competing systems for how you categorize things, but I always thought that the fused were cognitive shadows.
Okay, I have to read Die Hard again.
Well, it's not explained in there, right? It's just connecting the dots between, what's Vasher's explanation in Warbreaker versus explanation to Kaladin in
So I have
Rhythm
the quote.
of War.
I have the quote here from Zyle.
Yeah.
If you let a man die with too invested a soul, or invest him as he's dying, he'll leave behind a shadow.
Yep.
You can nail back onto a body.
Zeth also very similar.
And this is exactly what Zeth is.
Well, it's unclear if he fully died or not. It's really, it's like that scene in Avatar: The Last Airbender. So did he die? It's really unclear. Love you, dear.
Okay, but quick thing to note, since we're talking about cognitive shadows, is that cognitive shadows are mostly tied to the realms in which they died. So it's really difficult for them to travel off-world.
Oh, yes, but they're not necessarily tied to the physical realm.
Yeah.
Right, that's relevant to the events of Secret History, where Kelsier does not have any ties to the physical realm anymore.
Yes. Cognitive shadows are very common on Threnody.
Yes.
Not super common, as we've seen so far, on other planets, unless you're counting the fused, I suppose.
Well, and even then, they're not that common. There's special circumstances required.
But when Cosmere, where people see or are aware of a cognitive shadow, they automatically assume that it is a Threnodite.
Not, I wouldn't say automatically, but like when they...
But that's where their minds go to first, is Threnody.
Well, and I guess it's worth noting that, I guess possibly with the exception of the Returned in Warbreaker, like all those cognitive shadows are incredibly dangerous, right? The fused are agents of odium.
I suppose they are cognitive shadows, aren't they?
Yeah. The heralds are, they're some of the most competent fighters, in the Cosmere. The Threnodite shades, they can be passive, but they can also be incredibly aggressive and deadly, right?
Something's going on weird with them.
Yes. So like cognitive shadows, so when, Nazh says, how did you become a shadow? Like the first reaction, especially as a Threnodite himself, like that first reaction being fear makes sense.
I think he was also upset. Like, you didn't do any of the proper rituals.
Yeah. It's like, wait, how did you become a shadow?
This is why I feel like he's early on in his Cosmere journey, because he's just so tied to his own customs.
There's no rituals required for a Threnodite to become a cognitive shadow, right?
That's what it seems like it is. That's because that's what he was upset about.
No, because we see in Shadows for Silence, anytime a Threnodite dies, they turn into a shade. Similar with Sunlit Man.
But I'm telling you that Nazh was upset.
Well, yeah, because he didn't understand that preservation preserved Kelsier.
No, he was specifically upset that none of the proper rituals were followed.
Did he say the word rituals?
I'm pretty sure he did. I'm
gonna
go get my book.
Go get your book. I'll wait. Readers, I'm not gonna wait. Or listeners, I'm not gonna wait. So Kelsier is, I don't know, I wanted to talk a little bit about Kelsier and Hoid. We never really got, yes, but I think it's very interesting that Hoid is able to attack Kelsier as a cognitive shadow, that he recognizes someone who's already died, because that also applies to the Heralds, that also applies to the Fused, that also applies to the Returned, it also applies to the Shades on Threnody. So, like... that's a huge, and especially if Hoid is a competent fighter, that's a huge category of baddies that he is no longer unable to fight back against. So
I quote,
oh God, I'm wrong. Fuck.
"It's an important rite with requirements and traditions. This is," he threw his hands in the air. "This is a bother."
Yeah. All right. I was wrong. I'll admit it. Only because you proved me.
I took notes, damn it.
You did.
Very
job,
detailed
dear.
notes.
Great job, dear.
Did I mention last episode that there were a lot of words in italics in this book?
I didn't notice. Did I notice that?
There are a lot of words with italics.
No.
Some of them I don't really understand. And I'm like, Brandon, you are screaming at me and I don't get it.
See, I'm comparing it to another. I'm reading another book series right now in parallel. Starts with a memory called Empire, and there's a fuck ton of words in italics there. So I just, whatever. Must have just glazed over them. Between the dog and the toddler and the other toddler, there's a lot of background noise this episode.
Hopefully that noise gate really works.
Yeah, fuck.
What were we talking about?
Nothing important. Kelsier is better at making fire than Shallan is. And I think there's something to that, because he is...
I am a stick.
Yes, exactly. Right? That's exactly what I was thinking. And I know he wasn't soul casting, he was manifesting, and I know that they're different skills.
Kelsier has much more practice being persuasive.
Yes, but he wasn't soul casting, and she is a soul caster. And I thought it was interesting.
Ability and skill are different.
Right. But I thought it was very interesting that apparently anybody can manifest in the cognitive realm.
Can that happen on Roshar? I forget.
They talk about it some in Oathbringer. I need to brush up on it to be sure. I remember that when they're on the voyage to wherever they're going in Shadesmar there, the Spren do all the manifesting for them.
Oh, okay.
Because they didn't have any skill with it, I think.
Gotcha.
Speaking of people being upset at Kelsier being a cognitive shadow, the Irie also, when they see, when one of them sounds a quiet alarm about Kelsier, and then, Kelsier continues.
They think he's a Threnodite because
they think he's a Threnodite shade.
What I don't understand is how do they know he's a cognitive shadow and not?
They just know that he's an intruder, and so you're in the cognitive realm in Scadrial.
No, but they knew he was a cognitive shadow.
It could, we don't know how they detected him. They definitely had some kind of, the Rosharans would call it a fabrial. They definitely had some kind of warning device. It could have been an Aeon set up to detect them, something like that. And then they had to go and trigger another one.
But it didn't,
the second one was more specific about Threnodites, right?
Right, and it didn't detect Kelsier.
Yep.
Okay, we were supposed to be talking about Hoid.
I moved on, whatever.
So this is the beginning. This is the very beginning of Hoid and Kelsier hating each other.
I don't know that they hate each other.
Kelsier definitely hates Hoid. And I'm sure after this, Hoid really does not think kindly of Kelsier.
Again, I think they have goals that are at cross purposes to each other. I think, hate is a strong emotion, and I think it's more like they just dislike and distrust each other.
Okay. Did you read this book?
Yes.
Kelsier literally says that he hates Hoid.
Well, but by the
multiple times.
All I'm saying is, by the end of the Lost Metal, they're working together for a common purpose, and you don't, I don't know.
I really need to read Era 2 again. All of that stuff goes.
I was about to say, I do think, maybe they hate each other right then. I mean, they were fighting. Okay, yeah, get. All I'm saying
is,
and
Hoid can't be too happy that Kelsier got the drop on him, even if he is impressed.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit more about the Irie. Is that all right?
Hold on. I still have some more notes.
Okay.
About Kelsier and Hoid.
More about Hoid. Okay.
So Brandon, in a word of Brandon, he has said that everything that Hoid says is important.
That can't be true. He says a lot of stuff.
That's what the word of Brandon is. So one thing that I'm questioning, one of the things that Hoid asked Kelsier is if Kelsier is a Ska with noble bearing or a nobleman with Ska interests.
Well, they talk about this.
And Kelsier says it doesn't matter. And Hoid says, well, it's interesting. So why is that interesting to Hoid?
Probably for the same reason it was interesting in the Final Empire.
Just so he can get to know Kelsier better, or because of perception? Because perception is a huge thing in the Cosmere.
Yes, that one.
But how does that help Hoid? I don't know. I feel like I feel like there's more to know.
I don't think it
about that
needs
question.
to help Hoid. I think he, because he is also on a, journey of understanding, right? Where, he also wants to learn a lot of things and know a lot of stuff, right?
But why? Yeah.
And he does, as a personality thing, he loves teasing and leaving little clues for other people.
And understanding people.
Yes. And for more evidence of that, see the epilogue to Rhythm of War. Because, yeah.
Okay. We can talk about it then. And then Hoid says, "You need help, friend. I know a guy. Tall, bald, wears lots of earrings."
Sazed.
That's what I assumed. So at this point in Sacred History, this is still in part 1. So this is Final Empire.
He's saying Kelsier needs a therapist.
I know. But do you think that Hoid actually knows Sazed? Like,
he's been watching everything. Yeah.
But like personally, because like we know that Hoid and Sazed talk and correspond.
Right, but in the first letter that Sazed writes to Hoid in the Epigraphs of Oathbringer, listener, Sazed mentions that he doesn't know who Hoid is.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, no, it's definitely that he's been watching Sazed, and he's throwing that out there as a barb to taunt Kelsier with the intent. The clear intention to me is that Hoid thinks, is mentioning.
Okay, but there's always another secret. There's the initial purpose, and then there's the hidden thing. I'm just asking if there's something else.
Listener, if you were like placing bets on how long it would take us to say that line, take your drink now, I guess. I don't know. Whatever.
Wait, what?
Drinking game? Never mind. Don't worry about it. If you're making a drinking game out of how long it would take us to say, there's always going to be another secret.
There's always another secret.
Yeah.
We should, since we were talking about perception, also about the fight between Hoid and Kelsier, is the reason why Hoid does so well is because he's able to alter his perception.
Could be.
Because the reason why Kelsier has a hard time is he's expecting to be harmed by all of these punches and kicking and things. So because his mind thinks that it should hurt, it does hurt him. And Hoid, upon parting, was telling Kelsier, like, it's all in your head, dude.
Yeah.
Like, change your perspective. Like, it'll stop hurting.
Can you describe this in terms of Kingkiller Chronicles, dear? His Alar is strong?
His Alar is very strong, yes. For Hoid's Alar is very strong.
I'm proud of myself for that nerd reference. A different nerddom than what we're discussing here.
It's been a while since I was thinking in terms of Kingkiller Chronicles, but yes, his Alar is strong. Well, you need a strong Alar for the Cosmere.
Yep.
Especially as a cognitive shadow. When Hoid was fighting, his eyes glowed. Is that like the Dawnshard, or is that something else?
I literally didn't even notice that.
That's because you didn't take as good notes as
Apparently not. Oh boy.
There was a comment, but Hoid said that Kelsier did what he wanted. That Kelsier did what he wanted him to do. So I'm assuming that was just to kill the Lord Ruler.
Yeah.
Because he wanted. So Hoid wanted.
Presumably, Hoid hadn't gone through the Well of Ascension before because A, Ruin was trapped there and yoiks, and then B, because the Lord Ruler had it, under guard. And presumably the Lord Ruler, who was so megalomaniacal and paranoid that he would, genocide his own people, the Terrace people, to avoid having any competitors for his own power, presumably he would have felt threatened by Hoid had he recognized Hoid. That's my
Okay, so it's more about getting rid of the Lord Ruler and not necessarily about releasing Ruin.
Correct.
It's a fine needle to thread for Hoid.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. You're right. Huh. Do you think that Hoid wanted Ruin released? I don't think so.
Well, it seems like it.
Because Ruin hadn't been released by this point.
No, but it was, it's pretty obvious. That's what Preservation was saying, that, like killing the Lord Ruler, like made it almost certain that Ruin was going to get released.
I don't know. Sazed almost stopped it.
I don't know. I think there's some tricky stuff going on in there.
All right.
I do want to make a point that Hoid did not swallow that Laracian bead.
That's fair.
On screen.
Fair. I always make that mistake, and anytime I'm looking at it online, someone corrects me. Oh, we don't see him swallow it. We don't know he's a Mistborn. Even though I'm pretty sure we later see him burning metals in Stormlight Archive. Pretty sure.
I don't know.
We'll get there in Words of
I feel like
Radiance.
there's a reason why we don't see him swallow it. There's got to be a reason. We just don't know what it is.
Yeah.
All right, now you can talk about the Eyrie.
All right, the Eyrie. So the Eyrie swear by devotion. And
Yes.
So they talk about devotion and whoever's in charge.
In
I've
like the
forgotten
present
their name.
term.
Yeah, yeah. It's like we don't need devotion to power. You've got me.
So these are pre-Raod Elantrians that survived the Raod.
Yes.
Because most of them are bald.
Yes.
So like they lost their hair during the Raod, but then got their sanity / physicality back once the Raod was healed. So all of these all these Eyries are pre-Raod Elantrians that made it through.
Yep.
Which is an interesting kind of group.
Yep. Yes, it is.
So they're the group that don't get along together. Like there's Kelsier makes an observation that these people don't actually like each other.
Yes.
They're just all forcing themselves to work together to get to achieve an end.
Oh, I had written down in my notes for Elantris what Eyrie means, but I think the Aeon for it means like agelessness or timelessness. Is that right?
Agelessness. Yes.
So
Eyrie is age.
Yeah. So and that's a reference to that they are an ancient society. The other thing, I'm pretty sure it's not spelled out as clearly in this book, but I'm pretty sure there's this glowing liquid that we do see them drinking. I'm pretty sure that's purified door because it sustains them, it makes them a bit glowy, and it's very similar in character to purified door that we see in the Sunlit Man and the Lost Metal.
And these Elantrians would also be considered cognitive shadows, correct?
I don't know.
We don't actually know what happens when you get taken.
Well, and the way preservation says is that they died, but they didn't, right?
Which would almost be like a cognitive shadow.
But preservation also makes a point to say that it's different from Kelsier. So I don't know if they are cognitive shadows or if they still have that connection to the physical realm, right?
Yeah.
Or, are they cognitive shadows, or are they just holding a lot of investiture?
Well, we know that they hold
we know. Well, yes,
they're Elantrians are very highly invested,
and that comes from the relative order of things comes from Yumi and the Nightmare Painter.
Yes. Yeah. So apparently this Eyrie's goal is that their goal on what is the name of this planet? Scadrial. Their goal on Scadrial is to ascend as preservation.
Yeah.
Because then they think they will be safe. My question is, safe from what?
Well, we know that Ruin was going to go pay them a visit too, right?
We do?
Yeah, he mentions that offhand where he's like, you're going to, you've been to see the Eyrie. Once I'm through here, I've got to go pay them a visit. They've been around for much too long. I missed that. They've been around for much too long. Something to that effect.
Oh, he would find it very offensive that they're so ancient.
Indeed.
So they're drinking door. So to keep anything around in the cognitive realm, especially on a different planet, they needed a connection. They needed a constant flow of energy to the tower that they were all situated in. So we do see a cord going from the tower back to the planet. Cell. Because Kelsier is able to kind of touch those stones and see back into Cell. So how do you get a cord from one planet to another? Like, is that cord just all across space?
Well, distance doesn't work right in the cognitive realm.
Oh, that's true.
Right?
That's
where
right.
there's, yeah. So we don't really know how interplanetary travel works yet. But
it is easier in the cognitive realm.
Yes, because it has to do with nobody really thinks of especially at that point in
no one thinks in the space between planets.
Yeah.
So then,
like, other than just being a great distance, nobody has a conceptual, nobody knows what the distance between stars is. It's just a long, long way, right?
Right. Rihanna.
Oh, yes, Rihanna.
Right.
This is the first time we see her publication order. She later shows up. She's one of the Eyrie. I don't think we even really see, her distinguished on screen other than her name shows up. And she later shows up in Tress of the Emerald Sea as the Sorceress.
Completely missed it though. You had to.
Yeah,
you had to remind me of it.
You really got to blink. You really need to be looking out, or else you blink and you miss it. So.
But yeah, there's a lot of questions that pop up because we see the Elantrians.
Yeah.
So I would really like more Elantrians because they seem pretty kick-ass.
Yeah. I mean, and we know that that's supposed to be one of the big pillars of the Cosmere. It's,
It is?
Yeah. There's at least 2 sequels planned to Elantris, like full-sized ones, not just Hope of
Brandon
Elantris.
freaking gets to it.
Yeah, when he gets to it.
I don't know. It'd be very interesting to see the year of Sanderson. Well, no, what is it?
State of the Sanderson?
State of the Sanderson this year.
Yep.
Does that come out beginning of December or end of December?
I imagine it's going to be at least middle to late December.
After.
I think he's going to be a little busy with Wind and Truth coming out.
I mean, he has an entire company, so like someone else could like work on some of this stuff.
Yeah. And well, yeah, anyway.
Okay.
So that's all I got. What else do you
Realmatic
have
theory. So we've talked a little bit of the cognitive realm. So let's talk about some of the differences we see in the cognitive realm between here and Roshar.
Okay.
So some things that are similar is that the land and sea are still reversed.
Yes.
However, on Roshar, objects appear as beads in the cognitive realm.
Yep.
Well, in God damn it.
Scadrial.
Scadrial things appear as mist.
Yes.
So there are definitely implications to that. I just don't know what they are.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah, there's something different there.
I'm like, I can understand mists for Scadrial because, like, well, preservation appears as mist.
Preservation. There's more shards than just preservation on Scadrial, though.
Yeah, but at least that's some kind of connection. Whereas I like, what does beads have to do with?
I don't know. Yeah,
I guess Stormlight. Stormlight is stored in beads,
in gems. Yeah, I got nothing though.
So
I
like
don't.
The currency of I don't know. I don't see how they're.
Maybe it's just vibes.
I feel like we need to see a third planet's cognitive realm to really try to draw any conclusions.
Are we gonna get that in Secret Project 5? Do you think? I think so. Isles of the Emberdark.
When is that coming out? Is it out?
I don't know. It's not out yet. We're on the Kickstarter. We'll get it when it comes out.
Where was that being?
Jesus Christ.
There's so many things.
All right, continue. Cognitive realm. Realmatic theory.
There's no Spren on Scadrial.
Correct.
There's no Spren.
Yes.
Which is weird.
Is it? Spren are weird.
Spren are weird. But I mean, I guess the other point, I wonder if there would be Spren on Cell, because a shard has been splintered on Shell. Or 2 shards have been splintered on Cell.
They're not.
There has been splintering on Roshar, but there has not been splintering on.
We talked about this in the Elantris Cosmere episode.
We did?
Yeah, they're not Spren, they're Seons or Skays.
But we don't know how they manifest on the cognitive realm.
Correct. Well, we kind of do, because we see we see Seons in the cognitive realm in Rhythm of War.
My brain hurts.
Okay. Should we go handle our toddlers that are waking up?
No, they're quiet.
Okay, continue.
Okay. Metal is bright. Is metal bright on Roshar?
No.
People.
Don't think so.
People. So metal and people /souls are bright and light on.
Because you'd think they'd mention that in Words of Radiance, right? Because we see, the only real, thing that Shallan notes being in the cognitive realm for the first time.
No, they are little lights, aren't they?
They're little flames that represent the souls of people.
Yeah.
And then they start blinking out. But I don't think that was metal. I don't think the metal was
so
bright.
people are light in the cognitive realm on both planets.
Yeah.
But metal is different.
I think. And I don't know if that has to do with metal being a source of power on Scadrial that, generally isn't on Roshar, and how it's perceived, right? Because it's in the cognitive realm, perceptions play a very big role, right?
Yeah.
And so, where, having metal or not having metal on your person is a big deal, especially in high society on Scadrial. Not really anything but a thing in Roshar. At least that's my headcanon.
That's interesting.
Maybe when we get to Words of Radiance, if we ever get there, goddamn, we can keep an eye out for that.
Secret History is also a good place where identity is discussed. There's a couple sections on identity, especially when Kelsier's talking about the strength of identity for an object manifesting objects.
Yeah,
when he gets
he does.
he was saying that a well cared for object that had been lost was best because it had a really strong identity.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about realmatic theory, perception, identity, these are very important concepts in the Cosmere. We talked about Kelsier being cognitive shadow.
Debatably, I'm not. Is this the time for me to share my opinions about is this really Kelsier?
No, Kelsier and Spook. Later, Kelsier and Spook. So one of the things that I wanted to mention is that there was a really strong connection between Kelsier and Spook.
Yes.
Even though we would think that the stronger connection would be between Kelsier and Vin, but one of the things that Kelsier observes is that Spook has a lot of belief in Kelsier.
Yes.
So it seems that belief is more or less equivalent to the connection.
I don't think equivalent. I
correlates. It seems to correlate.
I guess the way I interpreted it is different from how you did.
Okay.
For me, it was more that Kelsier had a extremely big influence on Spook. Mm-hmm. And from that perspective, there was a connection. Yes. Vin, Kelsier had a big influence on Vin?
Yeah.
Yes, but at some point she moved on, right? But, where she doesn't constantly compare herself to Kelsier by the time we get to Hero of Ages.
Right.
Spook definitely still does. And his entire life, to an extent, is still... he still has his role within the team, but based on what Kelsier, sort of dictated, right?
Right.
Whereas Vin has outgrown that to an extent.
I guess my point is connection appears like it can be very one-sided.
Yes. Well, or, it doesn't need to be reciprocated to still exist.
That's what I just said.
Well, there's a difference between, I guess, the connection is still there. The connection isn't one-sided. It's...
Yeah, the connection is there, but...
Yeah.
Yes, I suppose. Okay. I think there'll be more to say about Kelsier and Spook in the future after some more.
After we see more
publications, hopefully.
I still don't think Kelsier is really Kelsier. I think it's a cognitive.
Yeah. All right. Now get on your soapbox.
I think on some fundamental level, the cognitive shadow bearing Kelsier's names and memories is not the same thing as Kelsier's soul, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't. It might be like 6 of one, a half dozen of the other kind of thing, but
would you say that?
Where I was going with this.
Would you say it's similar to how the shard intent takes over the vessel and changes the vessel? That a similar process is happening with cognitive shadows? Maybe,
and I don't think that's exactly right because in comparing it to how we see the heralds start to stretch too thin and go mad. Like they're not, I don't think it's a clear intent that's driving them so much as maybe a perversion of an intent. Mm-hmm. And so I do think that Kelsier, having been preserved, stops being Kelsier so much as he starts being the survivor.
The idea of the survivor, you mean?
I think he starts being an entity that is more concerned about its own persistence. It's
So
Kelsier,
the intent of survival,
right?
Okay,
but it's not even necessarily like preservation is
wait a minute,
intended to preserve things. Yeah,
that makes so much more sense now because if as a cognitive shadow he is attached to Scadrial, in order to keep himself preserved, he needs to preserve the planet of Scadrial.
Yes,
that makes so much more sense to me now.
Yes. Like, why is he so focused on Scadrial? But also, why is he so intent on getting off of Scadrial? Because he wants more avenues of surviving.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. So I think, Kelsier stops, but it's also like I forget. There was something where we talked about, I forget whether it was in Emperor's Soul or in well, anyway, there's a theme throughout Mistborn Era 1 in particular of things that are not Kelsier wearing Kelsier's face and co-opting his name for their own intents. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure if this is just another subtle iteration on that, where it's not the same Kelsier we saw in the Final Empire, so much as something that's really more,
It doesn't feel like the same character.
In some ways it does. But it and whether that's it's not the same Kelsier in the same way that any person grows and changes and becomes someone different over time, or like a clone or something like that.
It feels more like Shallan, reading Shallan chapters.
Maybe.
To me.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know. I just thought I just continued to think I'm not, sort of like I used to have this discussion / ongoing argument with my friends in grad school where if you make a copy of your own mind, using some neural network or whatever, like instead of having a generative AI, if you had a generative AI that was just a copy of your entire mind, would that copy be you? And some of my friends said yes. And I'm like, no. A copy of me is not the same thing as me. I
would agree with that. And my reasoning would be that because as soon as from the point of copy, you are now two different entities.
So you get into, I mean, and we're getting very cerebral now, but that's like, there's a Star Trek episode where there's in the Next Generation, there's an episode where Riker goes into a transporter and then doesn't get transported. And then we find out that, yes, it did, generate a copy of him in the location intending to go, but there was a malfunction. And so the original one didn't get destroyed. And so the way transporters work in Star Trek is you destroy the original and make a copy. And so to me, that's what's going on with Kelsier is the original died.
Does they have the magician?
Yes. It's the same twist as in the Prestige. Anyway, all I'm trying to say is I don't think it matters, but it matters to me.
So after that episode, they just probably didn't address it, right?
Yeah. Okay. It's Star Trek. They raise philosophical questions, but don't necessarily, especially in the Next Generation, they didn't follow them all the way through.
Okay.
Where were we?
I have no clue.
Do we want to wrap it up?
Okay, I have a bunch of things that I just want to list off that are in my head and I have no answers for.
Fair enough. This is still Cosmere casual, right? We're casual readers.
Yeah. So okay. Fuzz Learass says you zinc-tongued raven.
Yeah.
What can we infer from this?
That is from a planet that had ravens.
But zinc is a metal.
Like a soother. It's the metal that they burn for soothing.
So that's more of a reference for Scadrial.
Yes.
My brain hurts. All right. But why raven? Why are you using tongued raven?
They're clever birds.
I feel like there's much more to this. Who is Senna? Because he also mentioned Senna.
Indeed. And where is Vax?
Where or what is Vax? I thought Vax was a person, but when I looked at Coppermind, they're like,
Word of Brandon says it's a place.
What is Vax?
Yeah, but we don't know where it is or what it is.
Apparently looks similar to the cognitive realm on Scadrial.
Yeah. Probably not a happy place.
So Nazh and Khriss talk about the fact, also Hoid says that Kelsier disrupted like a whole merchant economy when he destroyed the pits of Hassan because that was a safe perpendicularity to travel. What was that economy? What was being traded? Who was going back and forth? Because I wasn't aware to like most everybody that there was trading going on. There's gotta
be more on that to come.
And was Lord Ruler was the Lord Ruler aware? I can't imagine that the Lord Ruler was aware.
I thought there was either a word of Brandon or something. I thought there was something that he was vaguely aware, but he didn't understand the whole scale.
Oh, he didn't understand.
Yeah.
Well, what the fuck was going on there? I have no idea, but I'm really curious to know.
Well, I'd imagine. Do you want my theory? Because I mean, what would make the most sense would be Feruchemists or Allomancers would be great, people to have.
And they would want to get off planet because they're being persecuted.
Right, exactly. So especially if you have a Feruchemist who's definitely being persecuted if they stay on Scadrial, or a half-blood Misting or Mistborn, and you don't get caught up in the rebellion like Vin and Kelsier did, it would be much safer for you to go off planet, and somebody could recognize that and trade for you great wealth to get you off planet. And then you could continue to make money, being a superhuman in a world nobody knows about.
Maybe it was Khandra?
Could be Khandra as well.
I don't know.
But I think because up until this point, Khandra were only concerned about gaining the contract and
probably
hoarding adium.
It probably wasn't the Khandra.
Yeah. Although we have a word of Brandon that there is a Khriss and Roshar by the events of Stormlight Archive.
Okay, but that's much, much later.
Yeah, it's like a few hundred years later, right?
Right. Point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kelsier at one point references like a mythical string showing the way home from the grand maze of Ishathon.
I just interpreted that as the story of the labyrinth and Daedalus, having an analog in Scadrial. Is that wrong?
Such a boring interpretation.
And maybe we'll find
You're
out
probably
more.
right. You're probably right.
Okay.
Because everything on Earth, most everything on Earth, there's an analog to. It still seems like a really random thing for Brandon to have put in. So I got a new perspective on Ska when I was reading Secret History this time. So they're all of preservation, right? Preservation and ruin, but a little bit more preservation. So maybe that's part of the reason why it took so long for them to rebel and rebel successfully, because they were more satisfied with the status quo because of preserving than normal humans.
Yeah, just one more reason in the pile of reasons, right?
Yes. Yeah. I think Kelsier kind of exemplifies discord in this throughout this whole book.
You gonna expound on that or just?
Nope, I'm just gonna leave that hanging.
Okay.
And I'm just so upset. Like, Ruin teared Kelsier apart, and yet he still survived?
He is a survivor.
I know, but there was like very little detail given there, and like for your theory about Kelsier not really being Kelsier, like that's the point that kind of convinces me, because I'm like,
not Kelsier actually dying, and the first line in this book being Kelsier died, and that's
not the point that I get tripped up on. It's the point where Ruin went after Kelsier, was ripping him apart, and then Kelsier wakes up. That's the point where I'm like, it's pretty unbelievable to me. So I'm like, something happened there. Okay, that's all my notes.
And you left off that the irony that Kelsier, who is, such a violent person in life, becomes known as the survivor and just emblematic of life. And then the brother Marsh, who in life was, relatively calmer.
He led the rebellion.
He was a part of the rebellion. I don't
think he was the general. Yeah, because he was Yaden before
Yaden.
Yeah.
Anyway, but the irony is that, Marsh becomes Death, old Iron Eyes himself.
Which is
even
referenced
on other worlds.
Yeah. So, spoiler alert, Marsh survives.
Also survives. Just as immortal. Well, not just as immortal, but,
so
as long-lived, if not a little bit longer, because he is the older brother.
So you have, really, spoken like the elder twin.
Whatever.
So you have Sazed, you have Kelsier, and you have Marsh all surviving from the first book.
And only one of them is only known as the survivor. Huh.
So
Curious.
It 3 seems like a lot of people to be for surviving that long.
Yeah. Anyway, our intro and outro. Oh, are we ready?
Yes, we're ready.
Okay, fine. I was going to say, anyway. Our intro and outro music is by the artist Ketsa. The song is Odyssey, and it is licensed through Tribe of Noise. If you have any questions, feedback, comments, give us patience. You give us grace and be patient with us on this whole exploring video thing. We're working on it. I don't know, whatever. Our email is cosmerecasual@gmail.com. You can reach out to us on Reddit, maybe Instagram. I don't know. Maybe LinkedIn.
I would have to make an Instagram account.
Maybe Hotmail. I don't know.
What?
I started listing off social media, and because we're not gonna make a LinkedIn account.
Hotmail is not a social media.
I just didn't get the reaction I was looking for when I said LinkedIn. So anyway, cosmerecasual@gmail.com or Reddit or whatever.
And until next time, keep your wits about you.